This is my true story. I am 78 years old. I raised my daughter alone after her mother died, gave her everything: big house, private schools, college paid in full. Last week, she invited me to her birthday party at an expensive restaurant. I walked in wearing my best suit. She looked at me and said, "You're embarrassing us in front of all her friends," like I was trash, like I was nothing. I stayed quiet, smiled, left early. Next morning I called my lawyer, and you won't believe what happened next. Before I explain, tell me where you're from, and please subscribe me. The invitation came 3 weeks before her birthday, a fancy card with gold edges, her handwriting in perfect loops. "Dad, please come to my birthday dinner at the Sterling Room, Saturday at 7. Dress nice." I held that card and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. My daughter wanted me at her celebration, wanted me to meet her friends, be part of her life again. We hadn't been close for 5 years. Not since she married that banker and moved to the expensive side of town. She was always too busy, too many social events, too many important dinners. But this invitation felt different. Like maybe she remembered I existed. Like maybe she missed her father. I went to the store and bought a new suit, dark blue. The salesman said it made me look distinguished. I got my hair cut, shaved carefully, polished my shoes until they shined. I wanted to look good, wanted her to be proud to have me there. The restaurant was downtown, valet parking, a doorman in white gloves. I'd never been to a place like that. The kind of place where the menu doesn't have prices, where people whisper instead of talk. I gave my name at the front. They led me through the dining room to a private section in the back. 20 people already there. Young, wealthy, drinking wine that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. My daughter was in the center, wearing a dress that cost more than my car payment, laughing loud, holding court like a queen. She saw me walk in. Her smile froze, just for a second. But I saw it. That flash of something. Embarrassment, maybe. Regret. She waved me over, introduced me to the people at her table. "This is my father," said it flat. No warmth, no pride, just obligation. Her friends smiled politely, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. One woman looked at my suit, old but clean. Another looked at my shoes, polished but worn. I felt their judgment, felt myself being measured and found lacking. I sat at the end of the table, the seat furthest from my daughter. A waiter brought menus. I opened mine and nearly choked. $48 for a salad, $65 for chicken. I closed it quick. Ordered the cheapest thing I could find. Pasta, $28 for noodles and sauce. The people around me ordered without looking at prices. Appetizers, main courses, desserts, wine, more wine. They talked about vacation homes and stock portfolios and renovations, things I knew nothing about. I stayed quiet, tried to be invisible, tried not to embarrass myself by speaking. Then someone asked me a question, an older man across the table. "What do you do, sir?" I told him the truth. I used to own a hardware store, ran it for 40 years, sold it when I retired. He nodded polite, but his eyes glazed over. Hardware store. Not impressive enough for this crowd. Another woman asked where I lived. I told her. The East Side, near the old manufacturing district. She wrinkled her nose. "Oh, that area," like I'd said I lived in a dump. My daughter jumped in quick. "He's very comfortable there, been in that house forever." Dismissive, apologetic. Like she needed to explain why her father wasn't living somewhere better. The food came. I ate quiet. Listened to conversations I couldn't contribute to. They talked about art galleries I'd never been to, restaurants I couldn't afford, people I'd never heard of. I was invisible at that table, a relic from a life my daughter had outgrown. Then someone asked about her childhood. "Tell us about growing up. What was it like?" My daughter laughed, a nervous laugh. Started talking about the big house, the private school, the family trips, made it sound perfect, made it sound easy. Never mentioned that I worked 70 hours a week to pay for it all. Never mentioned that her mother died when she was 8 and I raised her alone. Never mentioned the nights I stayed up doing her homework with her, the recitals I never missed, the college applications we filled out together. I wanted to speak up, wanted to tell them the truth. But something in her face stopped me. She didn't want them to know, didn't want them to see the struggle behind the success. So I stayed quiet. Let her tell her version. Let her erase the parts that didn't fit her image. Then I made a mistake. Someone asked me a direct question about her childhood. I started to answer. Started to tell a story about the time I taught her to ride a bike. How she fell and scraped her knee and cried and I carried her home. A sweet memory. A father-daughter moment. But I didn't get 3 sentences in before my daughter cut me off. "Dad, please." Her voice was sharp. Loud enough that nearby tables looked over. "Please stop talking. You're embarrassing us." The table went silent. Everyone stared. At her. At me. I felt my face go hot. Felt 20 pairs of eyes on me. My daughter's face was red. She looked angry, humiliated, like I'd done something terrible by existing. I closed my mouth. Smiled. The same smile I'd learned to wear when her mother died and people said things that hurt. A smile that hides everything. I stood up. Excused myself. Said I wasn't feeling well. Needed to go home. My daughter didn't stop me. Didn't apologize. Just nodded. Let me leave. I walked out of that restaurant past all those wealthy people. Past the valet. Got in my old car. And drove home in complete silence. The roads were empty. Just me and the headlights cutting through darkness. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I kept hearing her voice. "Please stop talking. You're embarrassing us." The way she said us. Like she was part of them now. Like I was the outsider. The embarrassment. I'd raised her alone for 18 years. Fed her. Clothed her. Paid for everything. Sacrificed everything. And in one sentence, she reduced me to something shameful. Something to be hidden. Someone who needed to stay quiet so her friends wouldn't know where she came from. I thought about her mother, my wife Sarah, dead 23 years now. Cancer took her when our daughter was only 8. Sarah made me promise before she died. Take care of our girl. Give her everything. Make sure she never struggles like we did. I kept that promise. Worked double shifts at the hardware store, saved every penny, sent her to the best schools, bought her the house she wanted for her wedding. Paid for the elaborate ceremony. Never asked for anything back. Never expected gratitude. Just wanted her to be happy. To have the life her mother and I never had. But somewhere along the way, she forgot. Forgot the nights I stayed up helping with homework while running on 4 hours of sleep. Forgot the times I went without so she could have. Forgot the sacrifices that built her comfortable life. She married that banker. Started spending time with people who measured worth in money and status. Started looking at me different. Like I was a relic. An old man from a life she'd outgrown. The visits became shorter, then less frequent, then almost non-existent. Always too busy. Always some excuse. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight I thought maybe she remembered. But she only invited me out of obligation. And regretted it the moment I opened my mouth. I pulled into my driveway, sat in the car for 10 minutes before going inside. The house was dark, empty. The same house I'd lived in for 40 years. The same house where I raised her, where she took her first steps, where I read her bedtime stories, where I held her after her mother died and told her everything would be okay. Now it felt like a museum, full of memories that meant nothing to anyone but me. I walked inside, turned on one light, went to the kitchen, made tea I didn't drink, just held the warm cup and stared at the wall. The anger came slow, started as hurt, then grew into something harder, colder. She was ashamed of me, ashamed of the man who gave her everything. I looked around my kitchen, simple, clean, outdated, nothing like her fancy house with the marble counters and designer furniture. I'd paid for that house. Put down $60,000 so she and her husband could afford it. They promised to pay me back. Never did. Stopped mentioning it after the first year. I never pushed, never asked. Just let it go because I thought that's what fathers did. But maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I taught her that my money and my dignity were both disposable. I walked to my office, opened the filing cabinet, pulled out the folder with all my important documents. The deed to this house, paid off 15 years ago, Worth maybe $300,000 now. The deed to the rental property I owned across town. Bought it 20 years ago. Worth $400,000. Generated $2,000 a month in rent. The stock certificates. Investments I'd made over 40 years. Worth close to $500,000. The savings account statements. $300,000 saved from selling my business and living modest. The life insurance policy. $200,000. Everything added up to almost $1.5 million. My daughter thought I was poor. Thought I was just an old man living in an old house, barely getting by. She never asked about my finances. Never wondered how I'd paid for her wedding. Her house down payment. Her car. She just assumed I'd scraped together enough. Never knew I was worth more than her and her banker husband combined. I'd lived simple on purpose. Didn't need fancy things. Didn't care about impressing people. Saved and invested smart. Built wealth quietly while she spent loudly. And now she was embarrassed of me, of the man who built everything she had. I sat at my desk until 3 in the morning looking at those documents. Thinking about my will. The one I'd written 5 years ago that left everything to her. My house. My rental property, my investments, my savings, everything. $1.5 million waiting for her when I died. Money she'd inherit and probably spend on things that didn't matter. Money she'd use to live the life she thought she deserved. Money she'd take without ever understanding what it cost me to earn it. By the time the sun started coming up, my decision was made. I wasn't leaving her anything, not $1, not after tonight. I didn't sleep, just sat at my desk until the sun came through the window. At 8 in the morning, I called my lawyer, Martin Webb. He'd handled my business for 30 years, knew every detail of my finances, every property, every investment, every asset. His secretary answered, said he was booked solid all week. I told her it was urgent. About my will. She put me on hold. Martin picked up 2 minutes later, his voice concerned. Richard. What's wrong? Is everything okay? I told him I needed to change my will immediately. Today, if possible. He went quiet. Then said he could see me at 11. I thanked him. Hung up. Spent the next 2 hours gathering every document I'd need. I arrived at his office at 10:45. Martin met me in the lobby. He was 72. Gray hair. Kind eyes. We'd been friends since before my daughter was born. He shook my hand. Led me to his office, closed the door, sat across from me and asked what happened. I told him about the dinner, about my daughter's words, about the humiliation in front of her friends, about the years of being pushed aside, forgotten, treated like an inconvenience. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, asked if I was sure about this, if I wanted to make decisions based on one bad night. I told him it wasn't one night. It was 5 years of distance. 5 years of being treated like I didn't matter. 5 years of her taking my money and my love and giving back nothing but excuses. Last night was just the moment I stopped pretending it would get better. Martin nodded slow. Asked what I wanted to do. I pulled out the folder, opened it, showed him the list I'd made. I want her removed from everything. The house goes to charity. The rental property goes to charity. The investments get split between 3 organizations. The Children's Hospital where my wife volunteered, the scholarship fund at the community college, the Veterans Organization. My savings get divided the same way, the life insurance too. Everything goes to people who need it. Nothing goes to her. Martin wrote notes, asked questions, clarified details. Then he looked up at me, his face serious. Richard, you understand this is permanent. Once you sign this, you can't change it on your deathbed. You can't have regrets later. This will become active the moment you die. Your daughter will get nothing. She'll contest it probably, fight it in court. I told him let her fight. The will is ironclad. She has no legal claim, no right to my assets. I'm sound of mind. This is my choice. Make sure the language is clear. Make sure there's no loopholes. I want her to understand that this wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. He asked if I wanted to leave her a letter, an explanation, something she could read after I'm gone that would help her understand. I thought about it. almost said yes. But then I pictured her at that dinner table, heard her voice. "Please stop talking. You're embarrassing us." I shook my head. No letter, no explanation. Let the will speak for itself. She's smart enough to figure out why. Martin asked one more time if I was certain. I looked him in the eye. "I've never been more certain about anything." He nodded, said he'd draft the new will by end of day, have it ready to sign tomorrow morning. I left his office feeling something I hadn't felt in years: power, control. For so long, I'd been the one giving, sacrificing, bending. Now I was taking back what was mine: my money, my legacy, my choice. I drove to the diner on 5th Street, ordered breakfast, eggs and toast and coffee, sat by the window watching people walk past. Normal people, working people. People like I used to be before I built wealth. I felt more at home there than I ever did at my daughter's fancy restaurant. The waitress refilled my coffee without asking. Called me Han, smiled, genuine, didn't care what I was wearing or where I lived, just treated me like a person. That's all I'd wanted from my daughter: basic respect, common decency. But she couldn't give me that. My phone rang while I was eating, her name on the screen. I stared at it, let it ring. She left a voicemail. I listened to it after I paid my bill. Her voice was sweet, sticky sweet. "Dad, I'm so sorry about last night. I was stressed, had too much wine, didn't mean what I said. You know I love you. Call me back. Let's have lunch this week, just the two of us." The message ended. I deleted it. She only called because she felt guilty. Because her friends probably told her she was too harsh. Not because she actually cared. Not because she understood what she'd done. I drove home. Didn't call her back. The next morning I returned to Martin's office. He had the new will printed. 10 pages. Legal language. Clear instructions. I read every word twice. Made sure everything was exactly how I wanted it. Then I signed. Martin's secretary and his paralegal witnessed. Notarized it official. Martin put the original in his safe. Gave me a copy for my records. "It's done." He said it quiet, like he understood the weight of what just happened. I thanked him, shook his hand. Walked out, knowing I'd just erased my daughter from my legacy. And I felt no regret. She called again that afternoon. I was in my garden looking at flowers when the phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Listened to it an hour later while washing dirt off my hands. "Dad, please call me back. I really want to apologize properly. I miss you. Let's get together. Talk." I saved the message this time. Wanted to remember how fake it sounded, how calculated. She missed me now. After years of being too busy. After humiliating me in public. Now suddenly she had time. I didn't call back. Let her sit with the silence. Let her wonder why I wasn't responding like I always did. 2 days later, she showed up at my house. Unannounced. I was reading the newspaper on my porch when her car pulled into the driveway. Expensive. New. The kind I'd never own because I didn't waste money on status symbols. She got out wearing casual clothes that probably cost more than my monthly utility bill. Walked up with a smile plastered on. "Dad." "Hey." "I've been calling." Her voice was light, cheerful, like nothing had happened. I folded my newspaper, looked at her. I know. She sat down in the chair next to me without being invited, crossed her legs, tucked her hair behind her ear. That nervous gesture she'd done since childhood. "I'm really sorry about the dinner. I was awful. I don't know what came over me." She reached for my hand. I pulled it away, put it in my lap. Her smile faltered. "Just for a second." "Dad, come on. Don't be like this." I said, "I'm sorry. What else do you want me to do?" I stayed quiet. Let her fill the silence. She shifted in her chair, started talking faster. I was showing off, trying to impress people who don't matter. You know how I get sometimes. I wanted them to see me a certain way. And when you started talking, I panicked. It was stupid. It was mean. I know that. Please forgive me. Her words sounded rehearsed, practiced, like she'd prepared this speech on the drive over. I asked her a simple question. "Are you sorry you said it, or sorry I heard it?" She blinked. "What?" Are you sorry for what you said, or are you sorry I was there to hear you say it? She opened her mouth, closed it. Her face went red. That's not fair. It's a fair question. She stood up, started pacing. You're twisting my words. I'm trying to apologize, and you're making it harder than it needs to be. I'm just asking if you're actually sorry, or if you're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. She stopped pacing, turned to face me. Of course I'm sorry. You're my father. I love you. I would never intentionally hurt you. But you did hurt me. Intentionally. In front of 20 people. Made me feel small. Made me feel worthless. Made me feel like loving you for 40 years was a waste of time. She started crying. Not real crying. The kind of crying that's meant to manipulate. To make the other person feel guilty. Dad, please. I made a mistake. One mistake. Don't hold it against me forever. I'm your daughter. Your only child. We're all each other has. That last part made me angry. We're all each other has. Like she'd been there for me. Like she'd visited. Called. Checked on me. She had friends. A husband. A whole life that didn't include me. I had this house. These memories. And the knowledge that my only child was ashamed of me. I stood up. Looked her in the eye. I forgive you. Her face lit up. Really? I nodded. Yes. I forgive you. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. Doesn't mean things go back to how they were. She looked confused. What does that mean? It means I'm not angry. But I'm also not pretending this didn't happen. It happened. And it showed me something I needed to see. What did it show you? That you're embarrassed of me. That the life I gave you wasn't enough to earn your respect. That I'm only valuable when I'm quiet and invisible. She shook her head. That's not true. It is true. You said it yourself. I'm embarrassing. So I'll remove the embarrassment. I'll stay out of your way. You can live your life with your fancy friends and I'll live mine here. She grabbed my arm. Dad, don't do this. Don't push me away because of one stupid comment. I pulled my arm back, gentle. I'm not pushing you away. I'm accepting the distance you created. There's a difference. She left crying. Real tears this time, maybe. I watched her drive away, went back inside, made dinner, ate alone like I always did. She called that night. Left another voicemail. Dad, please, let's talk more. I don't want us to be like this. I didn't listen to the whole thing. Just deleted it. She called twice more that week. I didn't answer, didn't respond. Let her feel what I'd felt for 5 years. The silence, the absence, the wondering if you still mattered to someone who used to love you. 3 weeks passed. No calls, no visits, nothing. I went about my life, tended my garden, read books, had coffee with my neighbor Frank every Tuesday morning. Went to the hardware store even though I didn't own it anymore. Just like talking to Jimmy who'd bought it from me. Life was quiet, simple, peaceful in a way it hadn't been when I was constantly waiting for my daughter to remember I existed. I wasn't lonely. I was alone. There's a difference. Lonely hurts. Alone is just a fact. Then one Thursday afternoon, my chest started hurting. Sharp pain on the left side. Pressure like someone was sitting on my ribs. I was watering tomato plants when it hit. Dropped the hose. Grabbed the fence to steady myself. The pain got worse. Spreading down my arm. Up into my jaw. I knew what it was. Heart attack. Same thing that killed my father at 71. I made it inside. Called 911. Told them my address. My symptoms. Then I sat on the couch and waited. The pain was bad, real bad. But I stayed calm. If this was it. If I was dying. At least I'd changed my will first. At least my daughter wouldn't get to profit from treating me like trash. The ambulance came fast. Paramedics loaded me up. Asked if there was someone they should call. I almost said no. Then gave them my daughter's number. Just in case. Just so someone would know what happened. They rushed me to County General, got me into emergency, doctors, nurses, machines beeping, IV in my arm, oxygen mask on my face. Someone said I was having a major cardiac event, needed surgery immediately, asked if I understood. I nodded, signed papers. They wheeled me away. Everything went bright white, then black. I woke up in recovery, groggy, confused. A nurse told me I'd been out for 6 hours. They'd done bypass surgery, triple bypass, 3 blocked arteries. I was lucky they caught it in time. Lucky I'd called when I did. Another 30 minutes and I would have died at home. She adjusted my pillow, asked if I was in pain. I said yes. She added something to my IV. The pain dulled. She told me I'd need to stay at least a week, maybe more depending on recovery. Asked if family was coming. I said I didn't know. My daughter showed up 2 hours later. I was awake but exhausted. She rushed into the room, eyes red, face pale. "Dad, oh my God. Are you okay?" "What happened?" I told her. "Heart attack, surgery. I'm alive." She grabbed my hand, squeezed it. I was so scared. "The hospital called and said you were in surgery. I drove here as fast as I could. I thought you were going to die." Her voice broke. Tears ran down her face. Real ones this time. Fear does that. Makes emotions genuine. I squeezed her hand back, weak but there. "I'm okay. I'm going to be okay." She stayed for 3 hours, sat next to my bed, talked about nothing important. The weather, her work, her husband's new promotion, filling the silence with words that didn't matter. When visiting hours ended, she kissed my forehead. Promised to come back tomorrow. Told me she loved me. I said it back because that's what you do, even when you're not sure it's true anymore. She left. I fell asleep. Woke up at 2 in the morning. Stared at the ceiling. Thought about how close I'd come to dying. How she would have inherited everything if I hadn't changed the will. How she'd never have known I'd planned to erase her. Fate was funny that way. She visited every day that week, brought flowers, magazines, better food than the hospital offered, sat with me while I recovered, talked more than she had in 5 years, laughed at my jokes, held my hand when nurses came to check vitals. It felt like old times, like when she was younger and actually enjoyed spending time with me. But I couldn't forget. Couldn't unhear her words at that dinner. Couldn't ignore the fact that it took me almost dying for her to remember she had a father. The doctor said I'd need months of recovery, physical therapy, medication, lifestyle changes, no stress, no heavy lifting, someone to check on me regularly. My daughter immediately volunteered, said she'd come by every day, help with whatever I needed, make sure I was eating right, taking my pills, following doctor's orders. I thanked her, but inside I wondered how long her concern would last. How long before she got bored of playing caretaker? How long before her busy life pulled her away again? I was discharged on a Tuesday. She drove me home, helped me inside, had already stocked my fridge with healthy food, put my medications on the counter with a schedule written out, set up a pill organizer, made my bed with fresh sheets, fluffed my pillows. She'd thought of everything. I sat in my recliner exhausted. She sat on the couch. We looked at each other, an awkward silence. Then she spoke. "Dad, I know things haven't been great between us. I know I've been distant, but this scared me, almost losing you. It made me realize how much time I've wasted, how much I've taken you for granted. I want to do better, be better. Can we start over?" I wanted to believe her, wanted to think almost dying had changed something, fixed something. But I'd lived long enough to know fear-based promises don't last. Once the fear fades, people go back to who they really are. Still, I nodded, said we could try. She smiled, relieved, grateful, said she'd come by tomorrow, check on me, make dinner. I said, okay. She left. I sat in my chair, alone again, wondering if I should tell Martin to change the will back. Wondering if this version of my daughter was real or just temporary guilt. I decided to wait, see if her actions matched her words, see if she'd still be here in 3 months, 6 months, a year. Then I'd decide if she deserved my forgiveness and my inheritance. She came every day for 2 weeks, brought groceries, cooked meals, sat with me while I ate, asked about my pain levels, made sure I took medications on time, drove me to follow-up appointments, helped me walk around the block for exercise. She was attentive, present, everything a daughter should be. I started to soften, started to think maybe the heart attack had scared her enough to change. Maybe almost losing me made her realize what mattered. Maybe we could rebuild what had been broken. Then the third week came. She called Tuesday morning, said she couldn't make it, had a work thing, important meeting, would come tomorrow instead. I said, okay. Tomorrow came. Another call, another excuse. Client dinner she couldn't miss. Would definitely come Thursday. Thursday she showed up but only stayed 30 minutes. Had somewhere to be, a friend's event, something she'd committed to weeks ago. I watched the pattern restart. The busy schedule. The priorities that didn't include me. The slow fade back to absence. By week 5 she was coming twice a week, then once a week, then every other week. Always with excuses, always apologetic. But the excuses didn't change the fact that she was disappearing again. I hired a home health aide, a woman named Rosa, who came 3 times a week, checked my vitals, helped with physical therapy exercises, made sure I was following doctor's orders. She was kind, professional, did more for me than my daughter who'd promised to be there. I paid Rosa out of pocket, didn't tell my daughter, didn't want to hear another excuse about how busy she was. 3 months after the surgery, I was mostly recovered, still tired easily, still took a handful of pills every morning, but I could cook for myself, drive short distances, take care of my house. I didn't need help anymore, didn't need my daughter's guilt-driven visits. She came by on a Sunday, brought lunch from an expensive deli. We ate in my kitchen, made small talk. Then she said something that made my blood go cold. Dad, I've been thinking. You're doing so much better now, almost back to normal, and I know you've been managing okay, so I was thinking maybe I don't need to come by as often, you know. Give you your independence back. Give me my independence back. Like she'd been such a burden. Like visiting her father twice a month was some great sacrifice. I set down my sandwich, looked at her. You want to stop coming? She shook her head fast. Number. Not stop. Just less often, maybe. You're doing fine. You don't really need me here. And I've got a lot going on. Work has been crazy. And Brad and I are planning a trip to Europe in the fall. I need to focus on that. Europe. I said it flat. She nodded. Yes. We've been planning it for months. 2 weeks in Italy and France. It's kind of a second honeymoon. We leave in October. When I was in the hospital, you said you wanted to do better. Be better. She looked uncomfortable. I know. And I have been. I've been here. I've helped you. But you're better now. You don't need constant care. I'm not abandoning you. I'm just adjusting. I stared at her. Saw exactly what was happening. The crisis was over. The fear had faded. Now I was back to being an inconvenience. A responsibility she wanted to minimize so she could get back to her real life. The life where I didn't exist unless it was convenient. She left 20 minutes later. Said she'd call me soon, set up another visit, maybe next weekend. I nodded. Didn't argue. Just watched her drive away knowing she'd shown me everything I needed to see. That night I called Martin. Told him nothing had changed. The will stays as it is. She gets nothing. He asked if I was sure. If maybe I wanted to give her another chance. I told him I'd given her 40 years of chances. 40 years of unconditional love. Unconditional support. And all I got back was conditional effort. Effort that only appeared when she felt guilty. That disappeared the moment the guilt faded. I was done. The will was final. 2 months later, my health took another turn. Not my heart this time. My lungs. Pneumonia. Bad enough that I ended up back in the hospital for a week. My daughter visited twice. Both times for less than an hour. Both times distracted, checking her phone, talking about her trip, how excited she was, how much she needed the vacation. She left for Europe 3 days after I was discharged, sent a text from the airport. Hope you're feeling better. Love you. Then radio silence for 2 weeks. No calls, no messages, just photos on social media. Her and Brad at the Colosseum, at the Eiffel Tower, living their best life while I recovered alone. Rosa checked on me. Frank brought me soup. The mailman asked if I was okay when he noticed my mail piling up. Strangers showed me more care than my own daughter. I wasn't surprised, just confirmed what I already knew. When I died, she'd cry at my funeral. She'd tell people how much she loved me, how close we were, how devastated she was, and then she'd cash the inheritance check and move on with her life. Except there wouldn't be a check. That's when the real truth would come out. I turned 79 in November. No party, no celebration. My daughter sent a text at 9 p.m. "Happy birthday. Dad, sorry, been swamped, will call soon." She didn't call soon. Didn't call at all. I spent the day with Frank. We had coffee and played cards. He asked about my daughter. I told him we weren't close anymore. He nodded, said his son was the same way. Too busy living to remember the people who gave them life. We didn't talk about it after that, just played cards and pretended it didn't hurt. That night I sat in my office looking at old photo albums. My daughter as a baby, as a little girl, as a teenager. Every photo reminded me of a sacrifice I'd made. The overtime I worked, the vacations I skipped, the things I went without so she could have more. I'd built her entire life on my back, and now she couldn't even remember my birthday until the day was almost over. I closed the album, put it back on the shelf, made a decision that had been building for months. It was time to make everything official, permanent, final. I called Martin the next morning, told him I wanted to add something to the will. A letter. Not to my daughter, but to anyone who read the document. An explanation for why I made the choices I made. Martin said he could attach it as an addendum, make it part of the official record. I spent the next week writing it, rewrote it a dozen times, wanted every word to be clear, honest, without emotion but full of truth. When I finished, it was 2 pages. Simple language, direct statements, facts that couldn't be argued. The letter explained everything: how I'd raised her alone after her mother died, how I'd worked 70-hour weeks to pay for private school, how I'd given her $100,000 for her wedding, $60,000 for her house down payment, how I'd covered her car insurance for years, helped with repairs, given money whenever she asked, never expected repayment, never kept score, until the birthday dinner, until she called me an embarrassment. The letter listed every time she'd canceled plans, forgotten holidays, gone months without calling, how her concern after my heart attack lasted exactly 6 weeks before she went back to being too busy. I wrote about the will, how everything would go to charity, the Children's Hospital, the Scholarship Fund, the Veterans Organization, how she would receive nothing because respect cannot be inherited, how love should be reciprocal, not transactional, how I'd spent 79 years learning that some people only value you for what you provide, not for who you are. I signed it, dated it, had it notarized. Martin attached it to the will, put everything in his safe, told me it was done, said one more time that this was permanent, that I couldn't change it later. I told him I understood. I wasn't changing anything. This was exactly what I wanted. Christmas came. My daughter invited me to her house for dinner. First time in 3 years. I almost said no, almost told her I was busy. But curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see if she'd changed, if maybe the holidays brought out something genuine. I drove to her house Christmas Eve. She answered the door wearing an expensive dress. The house smelled like catered food. Not homemade, catered. Her husband Brad shook my hand. Cold, firm, the handshake of someone doing their duty. They'd invited Brad's parents too, his sister and her family. I was the only one from my side, outnumbered, out of place. Dinner was polite, formal. Everyone talked about their accomplishments, their vacations, their investments. Brad's father talked about his boat. His sister talked about her kitchen renovation. My daughter talked about a promotion she might get. No one asked about me. No one asked about my health, my recovery, what I'd been doing. I was invisible at that table, a property, there so my daughter could say she'd included her father. Check a box. Fulfill an obligation. I left right after dessert, said I was tired, needed to get home. My daughter walked me to the door, hugged me, said Merry Christmas. See you soon. I knew soon meant months. I drove home through empty streets, Christmas lights on houses, families inside, together, happy. I wasn't sad, wasn't angry, just certain. Certain I'd made the right choice. Certain my daughter had shown me over and over who she really was, and I'd finally stopped pretending she was someone else. When I got home, I took out the copy of my will, read it one more time, felt peace, real peace. The kind that comes from knowing you've protected yourself, from knowing that when you die, your last act will be honest, true, a reflection of how you were treated, not revenge, just consequences. Spring came. I turned 80 in April. My daughter remembered this time, called me in the morning, sang happy birthday over the phone, her voice cheerful, asked if I wanted to do dinner. I said yes. She picked an expensive place, her choice, said it was her treat. We met at 6. She hugged me, complimented my shirt. We sat, ordered, talked about surface things, her work, the weather, a show she was watching. Nothing deep, nothing real. Then halfway through dinner, she said something that made my stomach turn. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something. Financial planning." "Financial planning?" I set down my fork. "What about it?" She leaned forward, her face serious. "You're 80 now. And with your health issues, the heart attack, the pneumonia, I think we need to start thinking about the future, about making sure everything is in order." "What, everything? Your assets, the house, your savings, your investments. We should make sure there's a plan, make sure things are organized so when the time comes there's no confusion." She said it so casual, so matter of fact, like she was discussing a grocery list, not my death. I stared at her. "You want to talk about my will?" She blinked. "Well, yes. I mean, not just your will, but yes. That's part of it. We've never really discussed it, and I think it's important, for both of us, to know what your wishes are, what the plan is." I took a sip of water, bought myself time. My wishes are already documented. Everything is in order. I have a lawyer. Everything is handled. She nodded. "Good. That's good. But maybe I should meet with your lawyer. Go over things. Make sure I understand what needs to happen. Make sure there's no surprises." "No surprises." I repeated it slow. She shifted in her seat. "You know what I mean. Just making sure everything is clear, that nothing gets complicated later. I am 80 years old, not stupid. You're asking about your inheritance." Her face went red. "Dad, that's not. I'm not. I'm just trying to be responsible." "Responsible? You haven't called me in 2 months, haven't visited since Christmas. Now suddenly you want to discuss my assets. That's not being responsible. That's being greedy." She looked around, embarrassed. People at nearby tables glancing over. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Can we not do this here?" "Do what?" "Have an honest conversation. You brought it up. You wanted to discuss financial planning. So let's discuss it." She put down her napkin. "I'm trying to help you. Make sure things are organized. Make sure your wishes are followed. Because I care about you. If you cared about me, you would have visited when I was sick, would have called on random Tuesdays, would have remembered my birthday without me reminding you. You care about what I'm leaving behind, not about me while I'm still here. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You've shown me for 5 years what you actually care about, and it's not me. It's what I represent. Security money. An inheritance you think you've earned just by being born." She stood up, grabbed her purse. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this. I came here to have a nice birthday dinner with you, and you're twisting everything. Sit down." My voice was hard. She hesitated, then sat. I leaned forward. "You want to know about my will? Fine, I'll tell you. Everything is going to charity. The house, the investments, the savings, all of it. You get nothing." Her face went white. "What? You heard me? Nothing. Zero. I changed my will months ago, after you called me an embarrassment, after you proved that your love was conditional, after I realized you only valued me for what I could provide. You can't do that." "I can. I did. It's legal. It's final. It's done." She started crying. "Right there in the restaurant. But I'm your daughter, your only child. Where is everything supposed to go? The children's hospital, the scholarship fund, the veterans organization. Places that will use it to help people who actually need it, not someone who makes 6 figures and still wants more. This is insane. You're punishing me for one comment I made years ago. I'm not punishing you. I'm making a choice about my legacy, about who deserves to benefit from my life's work, and you've shown me repeatedly that it's not you." She grabbed her coat, stood up. "You're going to regret this. I'm contesting it. I'll fight it in court. You can try." Martin made sure it's ironclad. "You'll waste money on lawyers and lose." She stared at me, her face twisted with anger and disbelief. "I can't believe you're doing this." "Believe it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to finish my birthday dinner alone." She walked out, left me sitting there, other diners staring. I didn't care. Ordered dessert, ate it slow, paid the check, drove home, called Martin from my kitchen, told him what happened. He asked if I wanted to reconsider. I said absolutely not. This just confirmed everything. She didn't speak to me for 3 months after that dinner. No calls, no texts, complete silence. I didn't reach out either, just lived my life, tended my garden, had coffee with Frank, read books on my porch. The silence didn't bother me, actually brought relief. No more pretending, no more hoping she'd change, just acceptance of what we really were, strangers who shared blood and nothing else. I was 80 years old, too old to waste time on relationships that only caused pain. Then in July, I started feeling sick again. Different this time. Constant fatigue, no appetite, losing weight without trying. I ignored it for 2 weeks, told myself it was the heat, old age, normal decline. But it got worse. I couldn't walk to the mailbox without needing to rest, couldn't sleep through the night. Rosa noticed during one of her visits, took my blood pressure, checked my temperature, told me I needed to see a doctor immediately. I went the next day. They ran tests, lots of tests, blood work, scans, x-rays, then more scans. The doctor called me in a week later, sat me down in his office, his face serious. "Mr. Coleman, I'm afraid the tests show something concerning. Cancer, pancreatic cancer, stage 4. It had spread to my liver, my lungs. Too advanced for treatment. Surgery wouldn't help. Chemotherapy would only make me sick without extending my life meaningfully. He said I had maybe 6 months, maybe less, maybe more if I was lucky, but not much time." I sat there absorbing the words. Cancer, 6 months, dying. The doctor asked if I had family he should call, someone to help me process this. I said no, I'd handle it myself. I drove home in a daze, sat in my driveway for 20 minutes before going inside. I wasn't scared, wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of fighting, of surviving, of watching my body break down piece by piece. I'd lived 80 good years, raised a daughter, built a business, made a life. If this was the end, then it was the end. I called Martin, told him about the diagnosis. He went quiet, then asked if I wanted to make any changes to the will, add anything, remove anything. I said no. Everything stays exactly as it is. He said he'd make a note in my file, said if anything happened, he'd execute everything exactly as written. I didn't tell my daughter, didn't see the point. She'd made her position clear. I'd made mine. Telling her I was dying would only start a cycle of fake concern followed by disappointment when she realized the will wasn't changing. Better to let her find out after. Let the lawyer deliver the news and the truth at the same time. I told Rosa, told Frank. They both cried. Both offered to help however they could. Frank said he'd check on me daily. Rosa said she'd increase her visits. I thanked them both. Grateful to have people who actually cared. The months passed slow and fast at the same time. I got weaker, thinner. Pain became constant. Pills helped, but not enough. I spent most days in my recliner, looking out the window at the garden I couldn't tend anymore, watching seasons change, watching life continue without me. Frank visited every afternoon, brought soup, sat with me, talked about nothing important, just kept me company. Rosa came every other day, helped me bathe, changed my sheets, made sure I was comfortable. They were my family in those final months, more than my daughter ever was. In October, I decided it was time to make the final arrangements. I called a funeral home, planned everything, prepaid for cremation. No service, no ceremony, just cremation and ashes scattered at the cemetery where my wife was buried. Simple, clean, No fuss. I updated my contacts list, made sure Martin had Rosa's number, Frank's number, people who needed to know when I passed. My daughter's number was still in my phone, but not on the contact list. She'd find out through Martin, through the will reading. That felt appropriate somehow. I wrote letters. One to Frank thanking him for friendship. One to Rosa thanking her for kindness. One to Martin thanking him for decades of service and asking him to execute the will exactly as written. No exceptions, no compromises. I sealed them, put them in envelopes with names on the front, left them on my kitchen table where they'd be found. Then I settled in to wait. Wait for the end. Wait for my daughter to finally understand that actions have consequences. That you can't ignore someone for years and expect to inherit their life's work. The will would be my final message. The last thing I'd ever teach her. I died on a Tuesday morning in November. Peacefully, in my sleep. Rosa found me when she came for her morning visit. Called the ambulance even though she knew I was gone. They came, confirmed it. Called the funeral home. Everything happened exactly as I'd planned. Frank was there. Held my hand even though I was already gone. Said goodbye to a friend who'd been more family than blood ever was. Rosa cried. Real tears. For a man who'd been kind to her, who'd treated her with respect, who'd tipped her every visit even though she said it wasn't necessary. They were the ones who mourned me, not my daughter. Martin called her that afternoon, told her I'd passed. She cried on the phone, asked when the funeral was. He told her there wasn't one, per my wishes, just cremation. She asked about my belongings, my house. He told her there would be a will reading, asked her to come to his office Friday at 2 p.m. She said she'd be there, hung up, probably started planning what she'd do with the money, the house she'd sell, the investments she'd cash out, the inheritance she'd been thinking about since that birthday dinner. She had 3 days to imagine her windfall, 3 days before reality hit. Friday came. She arrived at Martin's office at 1:55, early, eager, wore black like she was in mourning. Martin's secretary showed her to the conference room, offered coffee. She declined, just sat there, nervous energy, checking her watch. At 2 p.m., Martin walked in, briefcase in hand, face neutral, professional. He sat across from her, opened the briefcase, pulled out the will, 10 pages plus the 2-page letter I'd attached. He asked if she was ready. She nodded, said she was. He began reading. The first page was standard legal language. My name, my address, statement of sound mind, revocation of all previous wills. She sat forward, listening, waiting for her name. Martin turned the page, kept reading. I hereby bequeath my primary residence located at 847 Oak Street to the Children's Hospital of County General to be sold with proceeds funding pediatric cancer research. She blinked, her face confused. Martin continued. I hereby bequeath my rental property located at 1240 Riverside Avenue to the Community College Scholarship Fund to be sold with proceeds funding scholarships for first-generation college students. Her mouth opened, closed. Martin turned another page. I hereby bequeath all stocks, bonds, and investment accounts totaling approximately $500,000 to be divided equally between the Children's Hospital, the Scholarship Fund, and the County Veterans Organization. Her face went from confused to pale. She interrupted. Wait. What about me? Martin looked up, kept his voice even. I'm getting to that. He turned the page. Read the next section. I hereby bequeath all savings accounts totaling approximately $300,000 to the same 3 organizations listed above in equal distribution. My life insurance policy for $200,000 shall also be divided equally among these organizations. She stood up. Her chair scraped loud against the floor. This doesn't make sense. Where's my name? Why are you listing charities? Martin stayed calm. Please sit down, Ms. Coleman. Let me finish. She sat, her hands shaking now. Martin turned to the final page of the will. To my daughter, Elizabeth Coleman. I leave the sum of $1 as acknowledgement of her relation to me, and to make clear that her exclusion from this will is intentional and not an oversight. She gasped. $1. $1. That's it. That's all you're leaving me. Martin set down the will, picked up the letter. There's more. Your father attached a letter of explanation. Would you like me to read it? She nodded. Couldn't speak. Martin began reading my words. My letter. The one I'd spent a week writing, every reason laid out clear. The birthday dinner, the years of neglect, the fake concern after my heart attack, the conversation about my assets, how she'd shown me repeatedly that she valued my money more than my life, how she'd earned nothing, deserved nothing, how this wasn't punishment but consequences. Martin read every word. My daughter cried, then got angry, stood up, said she was contesting it. Martin handed her a copy of the will, told her it was ironclad, that I'd been evaluated by 2 doctors who certified I was of sound mind, that every T.I. was crossed, every I dotted. She could try to contest, but she'd lose and waste money doing it. She grabbed the papers, stormed out, slammed the door. Martin sat alone in that conference room, called me an old bastard under his breath, then smiled. Because he knew I'd gotten exactly what I wanted. The last word. The final lesson. The truth delivered when I couldn't be argued with anymore. My daughter never got the inheritance. The charities did, the house sold, the investments liquidated, everything distributed exactly as I'd written. She tried to contest, hired a lawyer, spent $10,000 fighting, lost. The judge upheld the will, said a man has the right to leave his money to whoever he chooses. That being related doesn't create entitlement. She walked away with $1 and the knowledge that her father's final act was erasing her from his legacy. Some people said I was cruel, heartless, unforgiving. Maybe I was. But I was also honest. I gave my daughter everything in life. In death, I gave her exactly what she'd earned. Nothing.